Welcome everybody, I'm Santiago Nieland and this is The Divine Within, the invisible connection with God. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the stories that shape us. Today we're going to be exploring the hidden powers of stories, the stories that shape our values, awaken our empathy, and quietly guide the course of our lives. Joining me is novelist and storyteller Johnny Gnall, a writer who believes that some truths are simply too important to be explained. They have to be experienced through story. Together we'll explore why myth and narrative remain humanity's greatest teachers, how empathy can become a life's calling, and why certain places, moments, and synchronicities seem to carry a meaning all of their own. Because sometimes the stories that we tell aren't just entertainment. They're invitations to become who we were meant to be. So welcome, Johnny. It's a pleasure having you here.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's an interesting topic, and you know, I love the stories behind myth and uncovering all the mysteries within myth. So it's going to be fun-filled and fact-filled as well podcast. So let's begin with our first segment, which is the stories as sacred vessels. So before we were books, doctrines, or philosophies, there were stories. Stories have always been humanity's original classroom, teaching courage, sacrifice, friendship, and purpose long before we could understand those ideas intellectually. In this segment, we'll explore why myth, parable, and the narrative still have the power to transform lives, and why the deepest truths often arrive disguised as a story. So what can you tell us, Johnny? And I know you have an interesting background and I mean, you studied literature, you have, you know, the basis of how to construct a story, but what is the mystery behind all this, you know, behind the science of writing a story and, you know, going to the heart?
I mean, I think, there's been a lot of evidence that has shown us, scientific evidence, that, the way the human mind is designed is to accept information through story. On the one hand, we all spin the events of our own lives into narrative. When we're walking down the street
Yeah.
or we're going about a task, we create our own villains and heroes and allies and everything like that. And we don't really say them out loud and write them down, but that's the way that our brains are designed to process what happens around us. You put things in order, you turn them into a story. So I think in the same way that we are wired to turn the world into a story, we're wired to receive information from the world kind of as a story in story form. As if you hear a story, it creeps inside your mind. It allows you time to kind of process it and remember it and let it kind of live inside you. And that's, that's all day, every day, kind of how I think we're living our lives.
Yeah, definitely. And I like this that what you're saying, because one of the books that I've read about from Jordan Peterson, and he goes deep into this maps of meaning. He talks about this and how exactly that we're giving meaning through stories to our lives. You know, I mean, because if not, it would be a very routine a life where you just wake up, go to work, and come back. But we have to create these stories, and we have to put ourselves in these stories, and really it's important how we tell the stories of ourselves, you know, because we can become the victim and we just remain in victimhood, or we can become the hero. So it's really important how we view these archetypes and strive for these archetypes. So in your experience, I mean, what are these elements, and how can you bring these stories, or how can you construct these stories and give yourself meaning or a purpose in your life?
I mean, I think for me as an author, it comes from my stories aren't written by saying, hey, I want to create this plot or this adventure or this series of ideas, and then put meaning into it. The way that I write, the only way I'm really comfortable writing is to start from meaning and then allow that meaning to find a shape that's gonna translate it, that's gonna bring it to the reader. I mean, I think one of the reasons for my whole life I had a hard time writing fiction was
Okay.
because when I would sit down to write something, there's no way, if you just try to think of an idea as a writer or just as a person, everything out there has been thought of. Every story has been told and retold and kind of repackaged. And so it's not about finding the right story, it's about finding meaning. And we all have different
Yeah.
things in our brains, in our hearts, that are important to us, that we've learned, that life has taught us. So I think using story to build those ideas into something that's tangible and that's communicable and that can be passed to someone else, that's where story really becomes the bridge between experience and knowledge. and passing that on to another person, whether it's the next generation or just, between two people right now having a conversation.
Yeah, and it's really important the way that you're saying it, and it's not information, it's stories, and we have to frame it, and there has to be, the characters, the archetypes, those yeah, the content of the story, the meaning, as you're saying, of the story, and how important in the way that we communicate, as you're saying, in telling these stories. It's a fact that the way that we've transmitted these stories throughout our lifetime, through civilizations and throughout
Yeah,
the ages, has been through these conversations. The classic campfire, where you tell the
exactly.
stories, where you have these heroes that evolve, and I like that symbolism. And I'm going to take an analogy, and I'm a big Star Wars fan, and there's two instances in the saga where it's through story that they can communicate what's happening, and they can, form allies. And this is when they are with the Ewoks, right before the Battle of Endor. The Ewoks were, a savage clan, but when C-3PO told the story and they could relate and they could have empathy, and that's what we're going to be talking about in a minute. The Ewoks were there, and they were crucial in that sense, because if it wasn't for them, the rebels were already captured, and if it wasn't for them and their desire to join this cause, to join this meaning, really saved the entire universe, and you really don't realize it, but that's what really changed it, right?
Yeah. And to kind of take it in a very different route, but in the same core of what you're saying, and I'm not going to get any super political on this podcast at all, I promise. But I, live in the U.S., so it's hard to not be aware of politics right now. But without even getting specific or into ideologies, just one thing that I've noticed is so prevalent today is the art of storytelling and how it is used
Mhm.
to spin what's going on, different places and different sources where all different people are hearing very
Yeah.
different stories and
Yeah,
seeing
the same news, exactly,
yeah.
it's the same
Yeah,
story, it's a
different
different
villains and
story.
different heroes and different allies and all that, and I think it's just really the nail on the head of what we're saying is this real world application of we're not around the campfire anymore. The campfire is the webcam or whatever, but it's the
Yeah.
same thing happening. The people who are telling the stories are doing it to further whatever their narrative or
Whatever,
just
whichever agenda, yeah.
whatever. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, from the Ewoks to the present day, it echoes through.
Then that's really interesting, and I like that you pointed out this, and how this is a mechanism in storytelling. And I think the one that really can really convey that story, can really put that picture in your mind, and you can live that picture really, is a winner. And this is as a salesman, I've been in sales all my life, and that's what you have to do. The easiest sell is when you understand something and you can really paint the picture, and you can see that, you can tell, and it's really through stories. When something applies, even a product, it can really stand out than just giving them the facts or the technical specs. It's what can this do. So in that sense, how do you think in how we tell stories? And you brought up a very interesting point right now, where I think we're in an age where we kind of broken truth, not broken, but we've kind of, and when in the
Yeah,
past, we killed God, I think we killed truth, and and
yeah,
and I believe that truth is universal. You can't have, different truths. I mean, it's there's certain things you can have opinions, you can have, different sides of the coin, but
right.
there's certain truths that really kind of set the North Star for us, and this is what I find in stories. And nowadays we kind of see everybody lost in these, in because of how everything, as you're saying, has been spun by the different
Yeah.
parts, that you kind of lose your way, right?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's yeah, the truth that we all know that's the one thing I think that it's unfortunate that all the spinning is happening. I mean, obviously it's unfortunate and we're all kind of losing sight of the truth, but there is a narrative in there that can be told. And I think in this age of spin and in this age of so much noise and so many different versions of the story, it kind of becomes a little bit more the job of us, whoever's being
Yeah.
told the story. We have to be more active listeners than we used to. When it was the campfire, it was like one person, one guy, obviously, it was always a dude, I'm sure. but it was one person and everybody listened. And the same thing in the ancient kingdom, there was one herald and everything like that. And now there's so many that we
Yeah,
don't have the luxury of just listening anymore. Hearing stories has become active. And
yeah,
on the one hand, that's tough. It's tough to say that we have to be active. But on the other hand, there's silver linings in that, and that our
exactly.
brains are being used. We're using our minds more as we listen to stories. We're not just internalizing, we're questioning more, we're
Yeah, we're
processing.
discerning.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
filtering it, we're deciding it. We're not always right as we do that, but at least we're thinking of it actively, and when you do that, it sits with you more than if you just sit there and put your ears open and listen. So there's 2 sides to the coin of
yeah.
this
Like
new
anything
age.
in life.
Yeah.
Yeah, and totally. Yeah, and that's an important point. As you're saying, we're becoming active participants, and it's interesting, and we're probably going to talk a little bit more further in the third segment, which is very interesting on synchronicities and the patterns that I talk a lot about. But here you can see that we're in a time where the way that I see it is we're at a turning point in civilization, and a lot of what I talk about in the Mayans is this is it wasn't like the what everybody thought of in 2012, like the end of the world, but it was like a time where humanity was going to become of age, and now we were going to be responsible for everything. So that kind of set a series of events, and now we're in this new world where everything is, like you said, we have to be discerning truth, we have to be understanding, and really believing in having a north star to what you believe. So to
Yeah.
interesting times, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And we're going to be talking a little bit more about your book, your novel, and I mean, it's really an interesting take on things, and through different characters. But what do you think, especially in the way that we talk or the way that we propose ideas? Why is parable the tool that Jesus used and to communicate? Because once you look at the his story, he used this element a lot. And what can you tell us about it?
I mean, parable is has always been kind of the little micro version of the story around the campfire. Parables, I think, are what we carry with us. That they're the very first ways, even from like Aesop's fables. The
Yeah,
very earliest ways as children that we have morals and lessons kind of packaged in this digestible amount where it doesn't have to be about this big broad idea that we're not quite able to understand. It's these small lessons that are kind of like the building blocks and the bricks of hopefully the person you're going to become or the person that someone wants you to become. But yeah, I mean that's they'll be timeless. Parables like that, and parables will be timeless because it's always going to be kind of the first step of this storytelling journey.
you mentioned Aesop's fable, and that guy's from Greece, from ancient Greece, and
Yeah,
those are relevant to our times, and I
totally.
think that's what's so important about the archetypes and the stories, that they transcend time, they go beyond the culture of the time, and even though there's the moral, religious, ethical evolution, throughout the ages. Those fundamental values, though, that those core values still are present throughout. That's immutable. So that's,
Yeah.
in a way, what I see as truth. As those things that are immutable, even if things advance. And even if they advance in retrogression. That doesn't mean that we're always going forward. There's sometimes in history where really we had to bring these ideals and values out to stand against evil, against
Yeah.
nefarious.
I mean, it's light and dark is the forever. It's always there. It's just what are we seeing more of at the time? I mean, even right now, we talk about the times, and again, not getting specific into politics, but I have a lot of conversations with people these days about how difficult times are, how bad they are. And, I say this not as a way of just throwing up my hands, but because I truly believe it. It's like, I don't think that the line of humanity is this or this. I think it's pretty much this. And we're seeing our spikes, our peaks and valleys, but, and maybe we're seeing more of the curtain pulled back now than we used to. But I think that, throughout time, it's the stories remain the same, the lessons remain the same. It's like you said, is these immutable truths. You look at all the different cultures and all the different religions that exist, present, past, future. You strip them down of the dogma and the specificity and the time and the place, and you look
Yeah.
at the actual core, what they're trying to say, what's actually happening.
Yeah.
They're almost all the same, It's like
Yeah.
they're dressed up differently, but it's we as humans, no matter where you are, you're gonna find those truths, like you said, those immutable things. And I think finding those immutable things, when you find them, it's a powerful thing. When you find it on your own, not when someone tries to show it to you or tell you. When you find it on your own, it's very powerful. And I think maybe that is the birth of story. That's story didn't come about just because someone was like, "Oh, we're bored and let's tell a story." I think
Yeah.
it came about because somebody, the first person who told the very first story, found some immutable truth and was like, "This is so important and so powerful and so strong. I need to share this with someone. I need to teach
Yeah.
people that's because they deserve to know this amazing thing that I didn't know a minute ago." And I can say as an author, that is 100%, this is kind of full circle. The way that my book came about, it was like I feel that finally at 40, whatever, 38, when I started writing the book, I had lived enough life, I had seen
Yeah.
enough things to be like, "Oh, I need to share some of this stuff that I didn't know when I was 20, and maybe someone will learn it a couple years earlier than me." But it all starts from those immutable things that you just know
Yeah.
when they hit you.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. So yeah,
Thanks.
I think and like I say, in the previous podcast that we talked about, how myth and storytelling, even before religion, because as a kid, it's really hard to comprehend, such large concepts as God and
Yeah,
whatnot.
yeah,
But really, values, ideals, good versus evil, all this, I mean, that's how we grow. I mean, we grow with stories and how important that is, as kids, as you grow up and you go into your teens, and then that's where you start kind of questioning your identity, your nature, and you start looking into more spiritual and religious stuff. But really, the fundamentals of a good person, of a good character that are immutable, as we were saying, discovering in this conversation, is they're brought up in these formative years through stories, through heroes, right?
for sure.
Yeah. Awesome, man. So we're going to close this segment right here. I think this is a great place to start because we're going to talk about empathy in the next segment. So stay tuned. In this segment, we're going to be talking about a very interesting concept. Empathy sounds beautiful until you actually feel what the others are carrying. And to stay open to the world means accepting both its joy and its pain. In this segment, we'll explore empathy not as an emotion, but as a calling, a path that asks us to move beyond ourselves, see through another person's eyes, and discover that our greatest contribution often grows out of the deepest wounds. So, what can you tell us about empathy? And I like this part because you were mentioning, that empathy is not something easy, but something hard. So, what can you explain us about this, Johnny?
Yeah, I mean, as someone who, identifies very much as strongly, strongly empathic. I mean, my whole life, I don't think I've ever been able to stand in a room with someone and not understand, or at least start to understand, kind of what they were feeling and just what they're going through. Um, and it's something that, as I've grown and learned what it is, what empathy is, and like kind of what it does, it's been something that I feel like I've tried to wield. Like it's like it is
Okay.
a tool that, you some people are born with it and it's strong and some people have to work at it, but it's a tool that you have that allows you to connect with another person in a very unique way. I mean, there are millions of ways to connect all day long, but when you
Okay.
connect with someone through empathy, empathy is to understand that other side. And it takes effort and it takes sacrifice, but it also means that when you open that give and take channel, um, you're changing the relationship with that person. It's no longer two people like this. It's a little bit more like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and I know I'm all over the place with that explanation, but obviously it's
No,
a
no, no, no. It's
it's a
interesting. I
complex
like it.
concept.
Yeah. 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 But you're doing a great job. So yeah, yeah. And I'm gonna jump in a little bit later, but yeah, continue. So it's complex, right?
Yeah. So I mean, for me, it's something that every day I try to. to choose to engage that. Not to go super tangential, but just like to keep the reference very narrow. In the movie that the I think it's the time traveler's wife, but this man who can travel through time, it's a British guy. He uses time travel to get the girl. That's the whole movie. And by the end of the movie, he gets the girl, and the movie, you think it's done. And what this sat with me so hard was the very end of this movie. After he gets the girl, he explains that he still uses his time traveling closet every day. At the end of the day, he gets back in the closet and starts his day over. And they show you the difference between the first day and the second day. And then the first day, he walks through the day and he goes about things and he pays for his newspaper and he does his job and everything. And in the second day, he goes through that, and every interaction he has with another person, he takes that 1 second to look up, to make eye contact with them, to give them a smile,
Okay.
have a walk with them. That to me is the purest form of empathy because it's not transactional. It's you're doing that sort of thing. You're pausing to give another person your time and your attention and honor them with that for that brief moment for no reason other than it might benefit them and it might not. They might not even look back at you, but sometimes they do and sometimes it means a lot. And I've had those moments my whole life where like every once in a while you have that second where you're like, "Oh wow, that really meant something that I stopped and had that conversation with that person." I'm gonna get, like, emotional, but
No, 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 no. I like this. I like
because
this. But I
that's
can
life.
really relate. No, but
Good, good.
I can really relate to this and what you're saying, and I can also say that I'm a very empathic person. And yes, and I like the word that you used. It's the tool. This is I'm going to quote you, but I'm going to go to the word that you use. But it's a tool that allows you to connect with another person in a unique way. So I like the word that you said, unique, and this is very particular because you can relate to people and you can be polite and you can be, friendly,
Yeah.
but to have empathy, to make that unique connection, you need to really understand, and it goes beyond just words. And I think you'll understand, what I'm trying to say. It goes beyond words, and it's just, the body language, the
Yeah.
just the vibe. I mean, if we're
Right.
gonna,
Right.
uh,
100%.
it's the
100%.
vibe.
And
Yeah,
it's I talk about how, like, my whole life I can be in a room with someone, now they're feeling it. I realize, like, when that connection is open and strong, whether it's because of one person or both people or whatever, it is two-way because I know that when I'm in a room, I watch how my energy affects other
yeah.
people, and that empathy is something you can open, and when you open it, if you're open to it as a person who has empathy and you connect with someone else through it, you're kind of opening that faucet 1 degree, and that person, it's up to them whether they're going to continue to open that faucet, but um it's something that can be activated. That's the best word. It can be activated in other people, which is kind of the point. It's kind of like sparks, like spreading, that's what we want.
Yeah, yeah, I can understand what you're saying, and yes, when you genuinely, and this has to be, and this is a key word, I think, when you genuinely express and that interest and that service to other people, and that empathy, when it's really genuine, like you said, it opens up the person's capability and realizes that something, there's a vibe that moves in there, and I'm going to give you this example. One thing that I read in your ancient book that really marked me is called the circuit of God, the God's love. And it says that the way that the love, I mean, it's all very complex, but the way that you return the love of God, the one that he gives to you, it's not like a one directional, you're giving it back. The way that you give it back, it's like a circuit, like positive and negative, that you have to connect the both. To
Yep.
start a light bulb, you have the battery over here, but you have to make the connect the circuit,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Exactly. It's
And the
a
thing is,
flow of energy. It's not a
exactly.
path.
And the way it returns is by serving and by loving others, loving your brethren. That's how that love that God gave you goes back. And you may have other love. So I really love that, and when and this is maybe what's happening, we're creating those connections that, a certain flow starts to go through,
I mean,
right?
we are designed, in my opinion, or maybe in science's opinion. I'll go out on a limb and say that, but we are designed to function like that. Human beings, it's. I think it goes without saying, human beings do better when they work together. I mean, over the
Definitely.
course of time, war is not what has accomplished great things. War has stopped bad things and everything like that, but when great things have been accomplished, it's because of cooperation. It's because of batons being passed and people understanding one another. And it's like, even if you look at the way that insects work together,
Yeah.
an insect's hive, it's easy to dismiss that as simple because it's bugs and it's bees and it's honey and whatever. But
And it
the way
happens, right? It just happens.
yeah, the way exactly, it's just there, it's just part of it, but it is a miracle, the way that a hive and a hive mind functions, the way that all these different organisms
Yeah.
know exactly what to do and how to work with each other, and you look at bees and are they communicating? Well, they're not having conversations, they're not writing each other letters, but they're constantly communicating. If you watch a nature special about bees, it's like every movement of a leg or a
Yeah.
wing
Yeah.
flap or a sound they make, it's and again, they're not making these things to say something to someone. They are communicating actively and outwardly. And it's up to all the other organisms to receive that communication and do what they want with it. And when that's happening, everybody's passing this energy and these messages back and forth. And that is what makes a hive mind work. And we're capable of doing that as people. Usually in history, we've done it through some kind of more awful ways, ways like slavery, ways like industry, ways that kind of don't respect the natural order of things, but we're also capable of when we work together, when we do connect on a bit more of this hippy dippy vibe energy way, we are capable of incredible things. And it all goes back to bring it back. It all starts with empathy, with opening that channel, like you said, opening that both sides of the battery, the positive and the negative, and letting that flow kind of happen all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the example that you gave of the hive and how each bee is a unit, but together it's the mind hive. I like that.
Yeah,
I like that because it's an autonomous aggregate of the smaller units, and this is what really is humanity as well. And what I teach about in the Solki, in the Mayan archetypes, and I call it the human matrix pattern, is because we are another unit, as individuals, but together as a collective, we also have this, and it's just
exactly.
different. It's more complex.
Sure.
Maybe a
Sure.
bee is this complexity, but in our case, we have mind and we have spirit. So imagine the level of complexity we're throwing into that, the dimensions we're throwing into that, and
Yeah.
the more cooperative we have to be in that in that sense, right?
Yeah. 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 A much more complicated machine to operate than the bees.
Like going beyond ourselves, and you're talking about this pain, and I can also relate to this. It's a typical or the classical when you see somebody cry that you begin to cry. You feel that
Yeah.
that emotion.
Emotional contagion. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about this contagion, because it's really interesting the way that this happens. What's your take on it?
I mean, it's interesting. I've done, a like very small bit of reading and research about it because it really is fascinating to me. It's the same thing with a yawn. It's the same thing. You see somebody yawn and it makes you yawn and you don't understand.
Yeah,
But, you know, I think that we've discovered as humans all these different waves in the air, right? Radio waves and ultraviolet waves and all the different things that are flying through the air. And we've learned how to harness some of them and everything like that. But, I believe honestly, beyond just the fantasy of my book, I believe as a person that, there's a whole lot more going on flying through the air between us and each other, between us and the sun, between us and plants, whatever. And I think when you talk about emotional contagion and that ability to feel that. It's like, when people talk about how if you're in a room, you can feel somebody watching you and you turn
yeah.
around, there's actually somebody there. There's no explanation for that other than the fact that some other organism is directing energy at you and you are receiving it. Whether you can articulate how or why is irrelevant. You're receiving that energy. So the
It's
emotional
like hunches. It's when you get a hunch, it's the
yeah,
same thing.
intuition, exactly. We are armed with so many more mechanisms than we know how to use, We
Yeah.
don't have a manual for ourselves, for our
That we can
souls.
understand, rather, not even use, we can understand what's happening. Yeah, I
Yeah,
totally
yeah,
agree.
it's like we bought something from Home Depot and we just threw away the manual. We're just gonna figure it out.
Or
But
we just use 10% of the
yeah,
capabilities of
yeah,
the tool,
exactly,
right?
exactly. The other 90% is doing rad stuff, but we'll just never know. So yeah, so but I think that emotional contagion, that feeling of sadness, that, seeing another person in pain and wanting to cry, like, that's a very natural thing, but if you stop and think about it, that's incredible. It's incredible that your whole natural psychological state can be so violently sometimes affected by a visual trigger, an instantaneous visual trigger. Um, and so, yeah, so I think that comes down to the fact that all the things inside of us that are receiving signals are in tune to all the things outside of us that are sending signals, and we just,
Yeah.
it's up to us to try to turn on as much as we can, whenever we can, because that's how you get the good stuff. That's how you get the info, right?
Yeah. I'm going to tell you a personal story of the earthquake of 2017, which, I mean, it's personal because, both the most devastating earthquakes of Mexico City happened on the anniversary of my birthday. So it's an interesting, there's
Interesting
actually
moment,
interesting
yeah, for sure.
coincidence. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but it was a very interesting day because, at first it was all chaos. You have the earthquake, and, everything's falling, buildings falling and chaos everywhere. But once I got my family safe, we were out, kids were coming out of school, and, they were safe at the home of a friend from school as well, but nothing happened to her house. Our house or our apartment really was damaged. But once they were safe, there was a calling for me to go outside and do something, and everybody was in the street. There was like, this was, a war zone. It was like
Sure,
chaos
sure.
everywhere. And you
Yeah.
go and in the end, I ended up with like a platoon of guys, and they were saying, oh, building fell over here. And you go over there and you go, and there was a need, and the next day, there was the restaurants were preparing meals, and the people taking out the debris or yeah, all the broken down stuff, and I was taking food to them. So, instinctively, you get into that mood. So I can't express it, but through that tragedy, we came close. And
Yeah,
that goes throughout all human history. How that
yeah.
those moments of struggle that's where heroes come out,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I mean, I love the expression that, you don't judge a person by how they are during the best of times when things are easy. You judge a person's true character by when the chips are down and when you're in the middle of a disaster, and those
Yeah.
are those defining moments. And you talk about the faucet being open, or the connection being open of empathy, and you're in a situation like that. Um, you're just completely open. There's nothing closed, and you're, like you said, you're just running and responding. You're in your most natural state, just acting and not overthinking, and just being there for
Yeah.
whatever is needed. That's which is the way that we were designed to be. Before society created all the distractions that we have, that was our job, was to just be somewhere and respond to what was there. Get food, go to sleep, protect family, all these simple
Be
things. And
present, be present.
be present, yeah.
It's
Your
amazing
simplest
nowadays.
form is that.
I see it when I ride the subway. I like I mean, I use music, but but I really don't like just staring at the screen. But nowadays you see people just connected in their own world and just really
Yeah,
disconnected, and they don't even they can even fall or whatnot. But yeah, that's the world where we live in. And
yeah,
anyways, I think that's gonna, change someday, somehow, and I think that's really like
yeah,
anything. It's really polarizing and showing us, darkness and shadow and light. Sorry, yeah.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
So before we go into the last segment, any closing ideas on empathy or anything that we missed that you might want to include to for our audience?
Yeah, I guess just it's worth always, I think it's always worth, kind of in any situation, taking a moment to pause and turn that empathy on, and just seeing what it gives you back, because it changes our interactions. It changes the interactions of our day. It changes the way you get home at the end of the day, and how much more meaning you can add to your life by, I think, if empathy is something that you don't feel you experience a lot, to try to open it in a weird way.
Awesome. I like that. I'm going to throw in a commercial here. And the reason why I always close this podcast with Carpe Diem is exactly that. If you seize the day, which
Yeah,
is Carpe Diem, if you make everything out of it and you make every interaction that you have the best out of it for even the smallest things, then you get everything. You go home and to bed with something accomplished. So that's really very powerful. So thanks for that. Thanks for that tip, which is really
Yeah.
important.
Hey, happy to help.
This is a very interesting topic because Johnny's going to tell us some interesting hypotheses, conclusions that he's had. But have you ever noticed that certain places, numbers, or moments seem to keep finding you? Some experiences feel ordinary, others seem charged with meaning, as if life itself is trying to get your attention. In this final segment, we'll explore the idea of Hearths, the sacred places that synchronicities that shape our journey and what they might reveal of our role as co-creators in a living universe. So tell us about the Hearths and your take on this.
So this is that word specifically. Not to plug my book, but that's a word that I invented for the book to describe these places. A hearth in the home is the fireplace or the stove where you gather around, where you get warmth, and often a place where you create memories.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a source of energy, but it's also a place where you add energy by gathering around and by sharing and by kind of making your mark. And so, um, this idea of the ability of the earth to have these concentrations of energy in other places really intrigued me, and it came from I'll share a personal story of kind of the real genesis of this concept. So in my younger days, especially being a chef, a professional chef, I certainly knew how to enjoy a drink or two. And there were, several different times where maybe I enjoyed a few more than I should have. And one particular time, I was at a party. I had too many drinks. I was walking my bike home and I made the simple mistake of like making the wrong turn, made a right when I should have gone left or something like that. It was at nighttime. I walked I walked like 8 miles before I
Shoot.
realized I had made the wrong turn. Really, it was a ridiculous distance to go without seeing. And when I finally realized where I was able to flag down a car and I got a ride home and everything like that. But it was at this crossroads of River Road and Slusser Road, and that's significant for a reason. A couple years later, uh, and this was actually the catalyst that led to the decision to write my book. But a couple
Okay.
years later, I was working an event, and I was being handed glasses of champagne while I was working. I ended up driving home, and I got in an accident, a bad accident, totaled my car. Thank God I was fine, but I got in a really terrible accident. At that accident, it was the day I decided I was going to take a pause on drinking altogether for a while. And that decision led to writing my book, which is the best decision of my life. Now, that accident happened, I kid you not, at the exact same spot where I had stopped that night, the exact same intersection of River and Slusser. And it really sat with me. And I was like, how is it possible that these two very significant experiences that serve to define a turning
Yeah.
point in
Yeah.
my life happen in this very
A
specific spot?
crossroads. I mean, literally,
Yeah,
you
and the
were placed
crossroads,
at a
and here's
crossroads.
this,
Yeah.
even crazier, the crossroads is River and Slusser. So I
Talk
looked
about
this up.
archetypes. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was
Okay.
curious. Yeah, a slusser is the person who like controlled the river and stopped the flow of the river for boats and stuff like that. So it was literally at this crossroads of the river and the direction changer of the river. I mean, you can't make that up. That was like written for a story. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and yeah, and so that really is what gave birth to the idea, and that idea of there are spots where something's going to happen to you, and when you find those hearths, when we find these hearths in life, I think it's another example of communication happening. I think it's a communication from the earth itself or from the universe itself through geography, through this place to pause, to take heed, to wonder, to learn something, to look around. Sometimes you do that and you come to this, especially because when you're standing in one of those places or you're around one of those places, you're more thoughtful as a person. You're thinking more intensely. You're being introspective. You're more open to epiphanies and everything like that. So whether we understand the why or the how these hurts present themselves, when you find yourself in one, it's worth kind of pausing and seeing what you can get out of it because you never know, you know?
It's an energy amplifier, and I mean, we're gonna take this apart, but I do agree with you, and I like what you said, and as you were explaining this, I was realizing you're kind of saying, there's personal hurts that you created and let you as a family kind of build. And I
Yeah,
don't know if it's
that
only
your
just
energy. Yeah,
I wouldn't limit that to just maybe places, but objects as well. I don't know. Maybe that's why the scepters and the swords and the crowns and those
yeah,
are all
yeah,
powerful.
talismans and everything like that, for sure.
Exactly, exactly. So I see that it's not only places, but there's also the collective Hertz, and I see that Earth itself has these power grids and these Hertz, both natural and man-made. And I think that you can really connect this. And I'm going to tell a story, and shoot, we actually live one of these stories together, and that's another podcast that we're going to talk about later. But
Climbing the
um,
mountain, step
uh,
one or,
yes, exactly. I mean,
yeah,
that was intense, but all right. So, anyways, pyramids.
okay,
I think I haven't been with you to Teotihuacan, but Teotihuacan is a very special place, and this predated the Aztecs, and this was from the Totonacas, that's where Don Miguel Ruiz gets the four agreements, from that culture. So it's one of the biggest and most important sites, and it has a whole process, and it's called the Calzada de los Muertos, the Avenue of the Dead. But it's a whole process that you go through, and it's supposed you die, or not you die, but you evolve from being just a mortal to being a god. So that's what
yeah,
Teotihuacan is, the place where humans go to become gods. So when you climb the Sun Pyramid, and you stand atop of that, there's energy. You can feel the energy, but once you get down and you continue the rest of your life, it's like an alignment. I mean,
yeah,
definitely there's powerful places and objects, structures that can really connect and conduct these energies.
for sure. I mean, they look at I know that they've looked at a lot of the different these wonders of the world and places where things were built, and oftentimes there are these energy anomalies, magnetic anomalies, they're physical representations that are showing you that there's something kind of special about this place in this area. And, I think that, ancient people, nobody just randomly decided where they were going to put things, where you're going to build the pyramids or where you're going
Like
to.
Giza, look at the pyramids of Giza and the alignment they have
Yeah,
with
exactly. Or the snake and the eagle
yeah.
in Mexico. I mean, that was kind of a combination of both an object being the animal and a place. This prophecy that there would be the perfect spot to build your empire. I mean, ironically, for not of nothing, they built it on the lake, right? That wasn't actually the perfect spot to build it because it's not working out so well anymore. But
Yeah.
that's neither here nor there. But yeah, I think that, history is riddled with these examples of one person or a collective of people recognizing the significance of a place, a thing, an area, and then, it's like we were saying, the you find a place that maybe has some energy, you build around it, you put your energy back into it. Um, there was the book. Did you ever read the book, The Celestine Prophecy? My mom
Yeah, of
always
course. Yeah.
recommended it. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
they talk about. I always loved that the detail of the garden that they were growing these vegetables and these plants that were like almost giving them superpowers, and not literally, but they were affecting them in ways that had never affected humans before. And they explained how, and it really made perfect sense. They said, we give our energy to the plants, we pray over them, we sing to them, which is also scientifically documented. You play music for flowers and they grow better. But this idea of we give our energy to the plants so they grow better than any plant ever, and then those plants go back into us and we eat them, so therefore we have that energy and then we put it back into the next plants. And look, we're back to this kind of battery idea of of
The cycle.
of the
Yeah. The circle.
cyclical
Yeah. Yeah.
recycling of energy. That's the way the earth is designed to work, right? There's no wasted energy. It's just transferred or recycled.
No, definitely, definitely. And I mean, we're talking about Hertz, and I mean the connections that you have, because in the end you have to see, once you see yourself within, I mean, it might sound cliche and maybe even corny, but we're all one. But yes, once you understand the symbiosis of
Yeah.
everything,
Yeah.
and you can see it in
Darkness.
in in mushrooms, in the fungi. Everything is connected to the mycelium, and actually not only
Yeah.
that world, but that serves as the connectors for the rest of the the,
Yep.
the plants of everything. So how everything is interconnected and how we serve. And you look at our neurons, our cells, and they have the same structure. So once you understand the system, you can replicate it and you can really analyze it. So I like it that that you have that mindset. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's when you don't when people don't see those similarities, it's because there are lots of people who, if you were like, look, man, we're really similar to mushrooms. Like we have a lot to learn from mushrooms. So many people would scoff at you and would would laugh in your face, and they're not going to even entertain that idea, and they're going to miss out on so much because they're going to miss all these connections, these things that you know life's wisdom is not something you get in like a book all at once. It's like drop by drop by drop that you get it. And the more you open up it and um experience these
An
different
experience.
these more different sources of these drops, that's the complete person that we all want to build, right? Is that
Yeah,
well-rounded
the rounded, well balanced,
yeah,
and I think the key word, and you mentioned that right now, is experience. And in order to really gain experience, in order to choose, because that's a lot of what life is about, is choosing. Sometimes it's really a clear answer, and sometimes it's not such a clear answer. But it's really going out and experiencing. If you don't experience that, then you become stagnant,
yeah,
and there's no growth and there's no evolution within you. And there's something that I like also, a concept in the ancient book, is that we're not only here experiencing a life as humans, spiritual beings, as experiencing a human life, but God through us is experiencing his universe as well, because he's fixed in a place, he's the center of everything. So through us and within us and through our experiences, he's experiencing his universe as well. So that becomes even more important, the way that we conduct ourselves and the relationships that we make, and the things that we put out in the universe, that really are positive and nurturing, instead of the other way around, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's we are in control of that flow of energy for sure. We're open, but we also have the ability to direct it as it comes in and goes out, and that's intention.
Awesome, awesome. So we talked about Hearths, and as physical objects, places, but also there's numbers, certain things. And I like this because then in numbers, I see that there's codes from other celestial beings around us, the typical 1111. I even had a podcast with a Shane, talking about that. But I've seen different numbers coming out, and sometimes I use them as my guiding or my compass, into should I go here, once I start seeing
Yeah,
that number, I
of
what
course.
can you tell us about this?
I mean, yeah, I think I assume that everybody has those types of numbers. I have the same ones. I mean, there's the ones that I would consider my lucky numbers because it's the date of my birthday or something like that. But there's also the numbers that seem to find you, kind of the way that you were describing. And it's funny. I'll
Hmm.
I'll be honest. I used to not be so much a believer about this. My sister-in-law, my wife's sister, who I'm very close with, the number 32 for her is the number, and I
Okay.
think that's a common one. 23 and 32 are the ones that
Yeah.
pop up in movies and books um, we got into a debate a long time ago where she was trying to like tell me about the significance, and I was trying to argue. I was like, no, what it is that in your mind you have attached significance to this. So you're just
Hmm.
noticing it because I think it's true. We see all numbers all over the world all the time. We're seeing, 100 numbers as you walk down the street.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was trying to say that, oh no, you're just noticing it just like all the other numbers. And then I swear to God, like within a few weeks of that conversation, I started like feeling like the number 32 was following me. And I was trying to now convince myself that it was this logical, rational, explainable thing. And I was just noticing. But, the more time passed and the more experience I had, the more I was like, okay, like this is, no, this is a real thing. And I think just like the Hearths,
Okay.
it's really about those are like little alarms, like little like beep beep. It's just like a beep, you know? Um, as you know, I lost my brother a while back, a few years back, and um, music was always something that was very significant in his life, and he's a very musical person, and it was a very very big thing between the two of us, always sharing music and sharing songs. And now, like, I've noticed the ways that I feel he still communicates with me or shows his presence is there are certain songs or certain music. It's not like a specific song. It'll just be moments where I will experience, I'll like see an object, hear a song, feel a feeling, right? It's like several different data points at once.
Yeah,
That to me,
it's not tangible. It's
yeah,
something fluid,
yeah,
you
and
know?
it's not just one thing. If it were just one thing, it would be easy to dismiss, but it's at this very specific moment all at once. These 3 or 4 things show themselves to me, and when 3 or 4 things happen at once and you have 3 or 4 data points, that's when any scientific mind, you have to at
Yeah,
least
yeah,
entertain the idea. 1
yeah,
thing can be
yeah.
random, 2 is a coincidence, right? 3 is a set of data and beyond that. So, I take these moments when I get these data points and I stop and just try to think like, "Okay, what am I being told right now? What is the universe just trying to tell me just at this very moment?" And I might get something and I might not, but I have. There have been times where you get it. And so I think, we find these hearths, these numbers, these patterns that find us. This is the same thing as a hearth. It's just a more abstract version of it. It's more three-dimensional. You know what I mean? It's not just in one place. It's kind of happening all around you. So I'm
No,
waiting.
no, don't definitely, definitely, in exactly. I mean, because this is what I talk about. Patterns and the structures and everything. If we look at this and the Solkin, the Mayan, the human matrix pattern is composed of two sequences. One is called the tones of creation, and it's a sequence of 13 numbers. So I mean, a lot of the numbers are going to start, become sound familiar, but it's a combination. It's a sequence of 13 movements, and you can see that in Genesis and in a lot of creational parts of mythology, how, it's in the first day, the second day, it's those movements, so
Mhm.
this is the structural pattern for everything in the universe. And then we have what is called the seals of destiny, which is, and the first one is just a numeric sequence, 1 to through 13, and the second one is an archetypical pattern of symbols with 20 symbols, and those are called the seals of destiny, and they're just for humans in this solar system. So it's that first sequence in the kind of the local expression of that sequence. So this together builds human, and it's very interesting. I mean, it's very complex, but
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
a pattern, and it talks about the three planes where we have where we influence, which is the mind, matter, and spirit. So you can see all these interactions, and that's why we see the patterns and the sequences. And I like that the way that you frame it, when all these coincidences and these things come a pattern and they converge. It's beyond just a coincidence, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's and again, that's, another example of just the universe communicating with us through all these different things kind of at once. And as long as we're open to receive the information, that's how you get through it. That's how you navigate the ride.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thanks a lot for all this, Johnny. I mean, we're going to do a special on your book, but can you tell us a little bit, like a teaser, because I want to later dive into your characters and the stories actually within your book. So, what can you tell us about your novel?
It's a story about a 16-year-old girl who is an animal empath, and she's struggling with that gift. And you know that is the journey of the book is her understanding and unwrapping this gift and its significance. However, the closer she gets to the center of it, the more she understands about it, the more she realizes that she and it are tied to this much bigger picture and much bigger story. This ancient civilization in the Amazon, this kind of more global trajectory that's happening. She realizes that this thing that used to be her flaw and the thing that she tried to hide is what kind of leads her to her destiny in the end and saves her mother's life in the process.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that really sounds great. And what's the name of the book? And it's already out and
Yeah,
about.
yeah,
So tell us a
it's
little
on
bit more about
Amazon,
that.
it's all over the place, it's on Barnes& and Noble, all those things, but it's called The Far End.
The far end.
And, yeah, it's
Yeah,
a
we're
great.
gonna do is later. We're gonna dive in deeper into that and go into more into the details of the stories and how that relates to other stories. But by the way, you're going to find the link here to purchase the book, so you can go directly there.
Perfect.
It's gonna be good experience. So before we go, Johnny, anything that you want to add before we go conclude?
No, I think this is nothing in particular to add other than that this has been a blast. I really enjoyed talking with you and kind of getting deep into these things and geeking out on the universe's secret messages.
Yes, yes. I enjoyed it too because a lot of you don't know, but he's my primo, my cousin. He's my cousin in the States. So we have a shared history, so we can relate to all of these stories. So it's always fun to talk about this. I really appreciate you coming to the show, and we'll talk about more about your book and other conversations. But thanks for coming, Johnny.
Sounds great. I can't wait. Thank you for having me, Santi.
Awesome,
Cheers.
awesome. And to the rest of you, if you like the podcast, remember to subscribe, share. You can even put the reminder, but we're always every day, basically, in all the weeks. And remember, talk to this to people, and if you liked it, and only if you liked it, so maybe they can find some value in it as well. And till next time, I'm Santiago Nilan. This is the Divine Within. Take care and carpe diem. On the Divine Within podcast, we share real conversations to help you find a personal connection with God. My goal is to support your faith, growth, and journey toward discovering the divine within yourself. Join us to deepen your faith and spiritual journey.